money, devalues the currency. They're the ones who, because there's a financial bubble out there, we say we can give you a free house, everything is free, you have a right to this and a right to that. Guess what? It's all artificial, it's all based on debt, it's all a fallacy, and when the bubble bursts, who gets hurt? It's the poor people that they pretended they wanted to help. It doesn't help at all. But who gets bailed out? Republican or Democratic administration. The rich get bailed out. The military-industrial complex. The bankers get bailed out. It's very important that we as a country, as a people, make the decision on why we had the financial collapse. Why does it come about? And if we don't pin a major part of the blame on the Federal Reserve, we're going to fail. In the Depression, they said it was the gold standard and too much free enterprise that caused our depression. Today, they're saying the same thing. Too much free enterprise, that capitalism and all that other stuff. It was too much crony capitalism is what we had. You know, we're going back to Congress, not this next week, but the following week, and I'm sure they're going to spend some more money. We were off the month of August, but we had to go back. A Speaker of the House called us back and said, emergency, emergency, $26 billion, come back. And we all flew back, was there for an hour or two, and they voted another $26 billion. But he asked me how I voted. If you have to ask, you don't belong here. The bailout and the spending is bipartisan. Everybody knows that. But now it's a political football, back and forth, who are the biggest culprits. But rarely do they mention the Federal Reserve and this problem really starting. I think the big bubble that we're unwinding that has burst started in 1971 after we delinked our dollar from gold. But I can't go into that completely. But I want to talk about this bailout. If you add up the dollars the Congress spent and the money the Fed, you know, without congressional consent, without any knowledge, without any auditing, they created $2 trillion, that's all. $2 trillion, they passed it out to their buddies. What did they do? What did they buy for us? Oh, they bought up all these illiquid assets. Illiquid means worthless. So they did over $2 trillion, and the Congress passed the rest. So $3.7 trillion, and that's about 3 years now. The big question is, what did we get for it? And they're wondering, well, why isn't the economy doing well? Well, all the money went into the pockets of the bankers and the corporate giants, the internationalists, and the people didn't get anything. Now, you'd think it would give a little boost since they decided they're worrying about a double dip. I tell them, don't worry about a double dip. We're in one big dip and it's straight down. Just because they can give you a government statistic where they're pretending the economy's improving, they said, oh, the GDP went up a little bit. Well, of course, you know, GDP, if they spend more money on the military, the GDP goes up. But how do you benefit if they build a helicopter, send it overseas, and it gets blown up? I mean, it doesn't raise your standard of living. But even in spite of this, with $3.7 trillion in nominal terms, the GDP went up $100 billion. That's very, very small. In real terms, the GDP went down. $3.7 trillion out the window. The people suffered, the special interests pick up the pieces, and they get the money. That has to stop, or the people are going to eventually get very angry about what's happening. And I'm afraid when the people get a lot angrier will come when the dollar quits working. And what they're doing is practically guaranteeing that our dollar is going to quit functioning. There's no history throughout world history where a fiat currency lasted for long periods of time. But, you know, gold's been around for a while. They've used gold ever since they recorded history, and it's still money. So eventually paper money will fail, but the bubble is bigger than ever. It's worldwide. It's based on the dollar. There's an illusion about our strength, which is fast disappearing, but they still trust us as an economic power and a military power, and that all conveys trust into the currency. But they're gradually moving away. China will move away. In Malaysia, they have already started a parallel standard. They're using gold coins. Paper money's coming to an end. That is when our job is going to get a lot tougher. You better hope that each of you can round up another 100 or 200 or 300 individuals that will be converted to the principles of liberty, because we need more individuals who understand this in order to put it back together again properly. I claim the bubble started in 1971, and it tried to deflate many times, and they were able to print money and spend money and sort of reinflating it. Just look at it like the bubble had a little hole in it. If you pumped hard enough, you could keep it inflated. But that's not the case now. We have a big hole there, and they're pumping. The $3.7 trillion didn't do one thing, and therefore this one is different. This is the big one. But you know, I think our economy didn't go sour just in 08. I think the economy went sour in 2000 when the NASDAQ bubble burst. I think that was the big warning. But they were able to create the housing bubble, and people got along a little bit better. But if you look at the economic statistics, things have been drifting downward. They just got much worse in 08. And that is, if you look at how many jobs there are in this country compared to 01, almost 10 years ago, there are 2.3 million less jobs than there were 10 years ago. 26 million more people. I mean, that is scary stuff. That's why there's a lot of people very, very unhappy. You know, my system of economics comes from having studied Austrian economics. It's based on personal liberty, but it's based on free markets, property rights, contracts, and sound money. And of course, we would have very, very few taxes under those conditions. We would, like, not have an income tax, you know, as a suggestion. But, you know, on a few times on the TV, they'll say, well, that sounds good, but what are you going to replace it with? How about, we don't need to replace it unless you think the government should run the welfare state and the warfare state. You know, that's if that's what you want, you would have to continue to do that. But you know, there's one concession, if you want to call it that. If we had the chance to work the transition, which I don't think is going to happen, from my experience in Washington, they're going to keep marching on. We'll go up next week there and spend more money, and the debt's going to go up higher. So I don't think we're going to, even after the election, we'll have enough people, because the correction is quite painful. It's like getting somebody off drugs. Politicians much rather give you another shot and another drink in order not to watch you have the symptoms. So that is probably you know, what's going to happen. But eventually, though, we will have to stop it. Now I have a suggestion on if you wanted to do something even before we get rid of the income tax in order to get their attention. If we could pass one law in Washington, well, I have a couple I would pass, but I have three I would like to pass. And they're all only one page. You know, like get rid of the Fed. But I would do away with holding taxes to make the point. Everybody send a check to the U.S. government at the end of 30 days, and we would have our revolution. But the other thing I would do is I would have a rule in the House of Representatives. I would say that every member of the House, on August 15th, they had to bring all their paperwork onto the House floor by themselves without their accountant and sit down and do their tax return, and they can't leave until it's finished. They would change the tax code before they would do that. The marketplace certainly is under attack. There's one question, though, that I'm asked quite frequently, or I've heard others ask, and I've been asked it a few times, that annoys me to no end. And there may be some of you that will disagree with me on this, but I think it's an important point. And that is, if they want to give you a tax cut, let's say we want to lower your taxes by 10%, those who believe in big government and those who believe they own you, they'll say, who's going to pay for it? Now, why does somebody have to pay for you being allowed to keep what you earn? I was just, that annoys me so much. I got to thinking, can you imagine what it would have been like if the founders were sitting around writing the Constitution? I say, well, okay, we have these farmers out there, and they're raising tobacco and corn, and we're going to allow them to keep 100% of what they raise. What do we have to do? We have to figure out how we're going to pay for that, to allow them to keep that. So the whole thing is, if you have a free society and limited government and balanced budgets, you don't pay for tax cuts. Now, if you want to do something about it, you know, if you want to cut the taxes and you don't want to massively expand the deficit, what you do is you cut spending. Now, the type of thing that I would work with those on the that disagree with me on the economics would be that I would cut overseas. We're spending $1 trillion a year on our military, and I think what we should do, if we work deliberately, start cutting overseas. It's easier to cut there, but to come and say, well, the first thing we're going to cut is child health care. You know, that makes a lot of sense politically. And you might even believe that, of course, the medical system is getting worse because the government's too involved, and it's going to get a lot worse. But there could be transitions. Unfortunately, though, I think this whole thing is going to come unglued, and then we all suffer because you won't be able to buy medical care if your dollar doesn't work. But, you know, let me talk a minute or two about the drug war. I think everybody knows where I stand on that. I think drugs are terribly dangerous. I think the doctors especially are derelict because people abuse and misuse prescription drugs probably a lot more than illegal drugs. But anyway, it isn't so much that I want people, you know, I don't emphasize the drugs. What I emphasize is choice, freedom, your own decision. But also with that decision on what you want to do with your own bodies, you have to assume a 100% responsibility for the consequences of bad choices. But you know, this idea that the government regulates what we put in our bodies, it really makes no sense. We're still pretty good about protecting intellectual speech. You know, we allow them to teach socialism and communism in our schools and different things like that. So we're rather tolerant, and we're tolerant generally up until recently, now that we have to hate all Muslims. But generally we respect freedom of religion. But when it comes to putting something in your mouth or in your lungs or in your body, for the last 70 or 80 years, it's just been determined that you're too stupid and therefore you have to be told what to do. And I have had members of Congress, not only on economic issues, but on drug issues, that the people are just too dumb and we have to take care of them. Now that attitude, we should make sure that we eliminate someday and get rid of those people who believe that. But, you know, the Food and Drug Administration, some people mean well in the Food and Drug Administration. They believe they're going to protect us, but they also protect the big drug companies. You know, they can have compulsory mental health testing, then they sell more psychotropic drugs and on and on. And then if you into alternative medicine, they want to regulate that, and they want to make sure they sell vitamins. You can't buy it on the internet, and it goes on and on. But it's also led to some really, really silly stuff. Like, we can't grow hemp in this country. They're afraid you might smoke it. Now, I understand that if you want to smoke hemp, in order to be equivalent to one joint, it has to be the size of a telephone pole. So, And also milk. Why do they want to regulate milk? Oh, because you might drink raw milk. Well, some people think that's better for you.